So, I really don't want to record this podcast, but I feel like it was important to do so, and I feel like somebody out there maybe need to hear this. These podcasts too are, I feel like, a way for me to kind of process things, move through things. Sometimes life gets a little bit crazy, and sometimes you just got to talk that out with somebody. Preferably a therapist, but sometimes I just want to come kick it with you because I appreciate the space that you hold for me once a week or once every couple weeks. So here's the deal. This is going to be a heavy pod. This is going to be a heavy episode. We're going to talk about things that may be potentially triggering for folks. So if you are not in the mood for that, that is totally understandable. But I want to give you a heads up that this is going to not be a happy pod and going to be a little bit of a deep one. And to be very frank about that, because your boy's kind of been dealing with some things, some family things, and some internal things, and wanted to just come share a little bit about those. So, to set the backstage or set the story a little bit, some background. I've never my family, my brother, my mom, my dad, I'm super close with. But I have a lot of extended family that I don't see that often. And so I've never spent a ton of time with extended family. Because they live in the South and it's kind of hard to get down there and life gets busy and so on and so forth. But about a year or two I have left living, I have two uncles. And one came up for my brother's wedding about 2 years ago. I hadn't seen him in, I don't know, maybe, I want to say damn near 20 years, something like that, long time. But my brother's getting married, and my brother's wedding was at my parents' house. Because my parents had this nice little, my mom hates it, I call it a log cabin, but it's basically a little log cabin up in the woods in upstate New York. So, my brother and his wife were hosting their wedding there, but because they were having a bunch of people come out, my parents wanted to make the place really pretty. So they spent a ton of time, like an entire summer, maybe even more, working on the house to make it really beautiful. But about the 12 to 14 days before my brother's wedding, they really wanted to set their game up, start preparing things, and they needed help for the wedding as well. So I flew back to help with that, and also to see my folks. And then my brother has kind of this like extended family member, this really cool Ghanaian guy named Dixon. He flew out because he also wanted to come to the wedding and help out. And then one of my uncles came out too. My brother wanted my uncle to be there, so he came out. And I hadn't spent much time with this uncle for, like I said, a long time. So I never really knew him as a man. We had that yearly catch-up call, once a year, call him on his birthday, and we talk about things. But and I never really got, you can only get so far in an hour, so deep in an hour. So we talk about stocks and what his kids are up to and this and that. But it was the first time in a long time I'd actually had a chance to really kick it with him since childhood. And he's always kind of been notorious as like the family jokester. He's always had a joke. He's like jokes on jokes. But this is the first time I really got to know him as a man and really got to know him, the other sides of him. Because we just spent so much time together. Like we we shoveled, like, I can't tell you how many, I want to say like trailers of mulch that, in those 2 weeks, but we shoveled a lot of time, spent a lot of time shoveling mulch, moving bins around for drinks and coolers and helping my dad. He mostly helped my dad build stuff. I was like, not a great builder, but I'm good at like digging. If you need like very solid general labor, that's my jam. But Unc was there helping them do math to calculate things, to build shit, manly stuff. And he would also be there to help cook. He was a great cook too. And so it was cool to kind of get to know him better, because as you're shoveling mulch, like, you don't have, it's like you're either shoveling and you're talking and getting to know the person you're doing it with. And so he was super helpful during those couple of weeks, but it was also interesting to get to know him better as a man. And there's a part of that story, his father committed suicide. My grandpa, which I never really met. I mean, I was a baby, but I never really got to meet my grandpa like that because he took his own life. And this uncle, that really affected him, obviously. And so it was cool kind of getting to know my grandpa that way, because through conversation with my parents, they had their own kind of perspective of grandpa compared to, it was cool to get to know us through Unc a little bit. And through Unc, I remember there were some nights we'd be preparing dinner or something, and I asked them about how he felt about his old pops, and he'd start tearing up and kind of talking about it, and it was cool to kind of see this deeper side of him, this more human side that wasn't just humor. And I think that's often kind of how it plays, right? The sad clown, like you often are, humor can be a beautiful band-aid. I think I often use it in that same way. And so it was cool. We really got to spend a lot of time together, and I got to know him, the selfless side to him that I never really knew before. The Ghanaian dude, he's like the family friend. He was like a rock star as well. He was always there. But I got the Ghanaian dude's name was Dixon. I knew Dixon more because I knew him. He would come up and see us sometime. We met and spent time with his family at a point. So I probably knew him better than I did my own uncle. But anyways, brother's wedding rolls around, and my brother, the way that they had the wedding, because he's pretty groovy, his wife is pretty groovy, they had, instead of like a kind of traditional wedding, there was like 3 days of wedding. It was the most tired I've ever been. It was so much work, but they had like close family and friends, like the night before, like the big celebration, everybody came, and we all stood in a circle, and they had a big sunflower, and they had these sunflower seeds, if I remember correctly. Sunflower seeds are some type of seed. I think it was sunflower seeds. You'd go up and you'd take one, and then you'd go, and you're all standing in a circle, and there was, I forget what it's called, but it's like the cool thing that you like stand under, the arbor, something like that. The arbol, that's tree in Spanish, so I know that's not it, but it's basically like this, that cool wedding thing structure that my brother actually built. And so there, my brother and his wife, soon to be wife, are standing under there, and the rest of us are kind of in this big circle around it. You have like a little sunflower seed, and then we go around in a circle. And the whole point was we're supposed to say, hey, I'm planting the seed for your growth, or it's a memory, or it's some piece of sage advice. It's like you're kind of like giving them good blessings in some way, and you can kind of spin it however you wanted to. And my unc, I was expecting to come up, again, shoot from the hip, have some sort of joke. And it comes in his turn, and there's maybe like 30, 40 of us. There's a lot of people. And he like takes a beat, and you realize that he's crying. Like he's kind of teared up, and he's kind of like trying to like compose himself before he speaks. And I don't remember it verbatim, but he takes the sunflower seed, and he's basically like, hey, he's like, just a little backstory too. My uncle had a really tough first marriage, like that like crashed him. He had a couple tough marriages, but for some context, so he goes up there, so he has to see it, and he's like, hey, sometimes you forget why you're in the relationship. He's like, it's great at first, but he's like, to sustain a relationship, it can be really difficult. So he's like, make sure you have something to look forward to. And he's like, make sure that you always have something that you can be excited about, that you can be doing together, whether that's a trip, whether that's, some sort of plan, whether, whatever that is, project, that you have some reason to keep going. Because he's like, it can be easy to get kind of lost in the bullshit of day-to-day life. I don't think he swore, but I'm embellishing here for the story. But basically, it was a really beautiful sentiment, and you could tell he'd thought a lot about it. Like, it was a beautiful sage piece of wisdom. And I think one, he was crying because it was a powerful moment, but also two, I think maybe there was some, you could almost feel like there was some regret there. At least I did personally. I'm projecting on him, but he did feel like he had this kind of weight to him, this kind of intense there was a sadness there, to him. And I think that part of that was because, that side of my family life was not easy. And, especially something with him and his own pops, I think always kind of weighed on him. And so that's a hard thing to experience. And I think anyways, he has this beautiful moment with the seed. And it makes me realize that this whole experience with him over this 2 weeks, that he is actually, even though he hasn't always played the best card, he has made some mistakes, we all do, but he still has some really sage wisdom. And at that point, still am, I'm looking, I want to have kids someday. I want to be a dad. And I remember asking him later about parenting advice. And that kind of was this reoccurring theme. I kind of have this little daily tip. I'd ask him for some parenting advice, or, for partners and stuff like that. And, we had a good time, and we celebrated afterwards. We all went out. We had a couple days after the wedding, and then he flew home. And then a couple weeks later, maybe a couple months, maybe a couple weeks later, I wanted to shoot a documentary on my parents' love story. And my parents met in Arkansas. And so I wanted to drive back down there to shoot that, to meet the person who introduced my parents, to have an interview with him, what that was like, shoot this little documentary on my folks. And we go back down there, but to get to Arkansas, obviously it's right next to Oklahoma. We go through and end up seeing my uncle again, as we're going through there. And we spend one evening together, and I think I got some of his perspective on tape, what it was like meeting my dad the first time, what he thought about my dad for the first time. But one thing that he did for us was he was a great cook, not in terms of anything super gourmet, but he was amazing, making grilled meats and stuff like that. And so he makes us this amazing rack of ribs. He actually made 2 of them, because he made 2 different flavors. One was honey mustard, one was maybe some sort of spicy barbecue. I forget what it was, but they were delicious. One of my favorite meals over that 10 dates when you were we drove all the way down to Arkansas, shot stuff, met up with people for 3-4 days, and then drove all the way back. And over that entire adventure, that was probably one of my favorite meals, was that one with Unc. And it was cool. I remember being in his house and going around and shooting, getting footage of photos and stuff like that. And it was a really beautiful moment. Beautiful meal. And then at the time, he was kind of, so this maybe a year and a half ago now, he just started dating this woman that my family was I don't think that's a great, she was this young kind of whippersnapper, already had a kid, but she was hot. And my uncle liked to square dance and shit. So do time with kind of country dance stuff. So anyways, later after that, he ends up dating this other lady that everybody's a huge fan of. They're oh my God, this lady's amazing. And so he and this new girlfriend, maybe just a year after that now, maybe a year ago to this point, is from today, a year ago. I don't know, I'm having such a hard time explaining time right now. Came up to visit my brother and his wife. And my brother has a photo of them all doing ribs. And if I can remember, I'll put the photo up here. And he came up, taught my brother how to do the ribs and stuff like that, and just had a really good time. And again, I remember my sister-in-law, I remember saying he just has a good soul. You can just feel it. He feels he has a good soul, a good energy. But you can tell there is, again, this kind of, there's a bit of sadness in him. Anyways, last Monday, so almost a week ago from today, I got a call from my folks and learned that that father like son had also taken his own life. And it's been a really weird week, because it's not we were best buddies. But having that time to reconnect with him, I was really, I've had big, he was a good dude, and I was really looking forward to, building that relationship even more. I wanted him to meet my girlfriend, I wanted him to meet Lena and maybe come to my wedding, there is just interesting reconnecting with him in this way. There are even a couple family stories that he had that my parents didn't, that I reached out and had him send, voice notes for, because I was like, hey, what happened in, this situation or whatever. So, one of the hard parts is whenever you lose family like that too, like you lose family history, because there are stories that as more people in your family perish, so does your family history, because there are certain stories that only certain people can tell. And if you don't record them, then you lose them. And I feel like I've been underwater all week. Like at first, when I got the news, my parents feel like they've been actually holding up surprisingly well. But I felt like numb, I think is the best way to put it. And I can't remember the last time that I just wanted to be Friday. I wanted the week to be over so that much. I woke up Tuesday and I was like, is it Friday? I felt like it was Friday already, because I felt like, I don't know, I'd had this emotional journey back again. But it's also strange losing somebody like that, who it's not like your best friends, but you feel like there's potential for the friendship. And also when you feel like you lose somebody too soon. So I've had other family members where it's like their life is basic, they're struggling, they have no quality of life, they're ready to pass on, and it's like that, it's different. Like my grandma, she was ready, it was like she was like, I'm done, I'm ready to go meet, my grandpa up there. And so when she passed, it was like, thank you, because you could tell life was painful for her at that point. So, but this was not the case. Unc was his last couple weeks maybe until he retired. And he's the type of guy that didn't love his work, that always was talking about what he was going to do when he was retired. And it was crazy to think that it was he was so close to it. But in his suicide note, it was short, but he talked about he basically felt he had no options left. He had some weird money stuff going on, and he felt like he was having some stuff with his kidneys, and he was like, I don't want to be on dialysis again. And some other weird shenanigans that he felt like maybe he'd done something illegal, but I Googled it, looked around, and that definitely wasn't illegal. One of the lines, he was it was just weird. So it was it's really tough, I think, when you lose somebody like that, when you're just not ready. And I mean, he still had a full life. I think he was almost 70, maybe he was 70. A lot of people go sooner than that. But still, I think it's hard for me, because I kept looking forward to him having this last chapter. He was one of those guys that always the job stuff was cool, but it was never he was making probably enough as he should have. He had a couple hiccups along the way, life-wise, in terms of relationships and stuff that the man it seemed like he never caught a break. And I was like, this is it. This new girlfriend, she seemed really cool, and he was about to retire. I was like, the man is finally coming into his own, damn near 70 years old, is gonna have this next chapter of his life, his twilight years are gonna be then he has 20 years left. Health stuff, whatever, but maybe you'd be 90, maybe you would, but at least 10, you get a decade, of being able to enjoy the money working your whole life for, going dancing and spend time with this new lady and not having to work for the man. And we all have our own lenses, right? To me, the perfect life is one where I don't have to, I think, work for anyone other than myself. So to me, that is ultimate freedom. And so to me, I'm I can't believe it. We're my brother checked me on this when I reached out to him, and he felt kind of, I was like, dude, how you feeling? He's he's pretty numb, honestly. I was like, yeah, me too. I was like, I can't believe he's gone. But Blotty's about to retire. And he's like, yeah, you never know what people are going through. And so I just wanted to extend that little olive branch to you, that you never know what people are going through, whatever you are going through. Unc, I could tell from the suicide note, he felt trapped. He felt like there was no other option, but there always are. And it might not be easy. It doesn't mean that there's always a great option, but there's always options. And but we really are just a brain in a black box. I was talking to Lena about this. that we're just like a ball of mush in a black box. And if you don't get perspective, if you don't share with people, if you don't ask for help, then you never get to see outside of your own little black box in this little loop that you can get caught in. That, you know, I remember I had this business coach tell me, like, you can't read the ingredients from inside the jar. Like, it's great for business, but I think it applies for all of life. Like, when you're in the jar, you don't get to see what's on the label. You know, it's like you're in this black box within your brain, and it's like it all feels like it's right here, and it feels like it's just you. It feels like nobody gets it, nobody would understand. And I'm just bummed, you know, that he's gone, because definitely one of those people that's gone too soon. Definitely one of those people I was looking forward to hanging out more with, and definitely one of those people who I don't think ever quite got their time, and I feel like it was coming. And talking to Lena about it, she dropped some interesting perspective on me. I'm not sure if I fully agree with it or not, but I forget where she read it. It might just be some of that like Latino wisdom, you know, magical realism, Latino wisdom. But she, you know, when I told her about it, she said, hey, maybe there are people in this life who have a hard life and never get to the point where it's easy. Maybe because it's them going through that is almost to show the rest of us how to live, or to sort of act as a beacon of, like, they maybe take on a heavier load for the rest of us, so that the rest of us can kind of see what that can look like, and to try to sometimes avoid those same mistakes. And it's almost like the greatest act of service that you could give is like your entire life is almost, you know, in service of others, which, again, I'm not sure I'm totally on board with, but I think it's interesting, and kind of a bummer, just because I want to believe that, like, there is still meaning to be found in no matter the circumstances on some Viktor Frankl shit. But I also fully understand, you know, especially being out here in Medellin, you get up, you know, you go to favelas in Brazil, spend a time in India, that, like, sometimes life is just fucking hard for people. And sometimes you never quite lets the foot off the pedal, you know, it's always it just grinds you, you know, day one, you know, from the first day to the last day. And sometimes you never quite get out from under it. And so, to me, though, again, every perspective's their own. I feel like there's so much to live for. I also know I'm in a very different perspective, different history, everything. But I feel like even he did. But again, I'm not in his own. You know, I wasn't in his head. I'm not in his head. Don't know what it was that exactly that he was thinking. But yeah, I think the PSA is, like, you're loved. There's always options. Don't do anything brash. You know, there are resources. One that I love is, if it's even on your radar, this type of thinking, is Tim Ferriss has a really great piece on this about suicide. And it's because he realized he sent a book by accident about, I forget what it was. It was something where he was going to take his own life. And the book that he ordered, though, was like how to create some sort of drug or some sort of like weird noose or it was something really strange. And he sent it to his home address by accident, and his mom found it, and his mom asked him about it. And he realized how, if not for like himself, that he should like stay alive because of family and other people. But it's a really powerful article. I recommend it. And I think it's because I'm feeling those ripple effects right now of, like, you know, when you go, it's not just like you bounce, but like there's that ripple effect goes for, possibly for generations. You know, I think since my grandpa took his life, my uncle took his life, there's a piece of it that does feel like on some spiritual shit, like almost feel like this, like family inertia almost. It feels like the sort of like generational inertia that is now like kind of caught up to me in a weird way. Like this pressure. And like that that those decisions and that kind of energy like resonates through like the branches of the family tree, you know? And so I have felt like the energy shift. And I don't, you know, it's only been a week, so I haven't had enough time to really dig into it, but it's something's there, something's changed. You know, I've been hearing a lot about, I think it's called like family constellation therapy or something like that. Like basically like the way that like the family, like the whole family tree, how it like that, those decisions from generations or whatever, kind of like body keeps score type of shit that kind of like filter down to you sometimes subconsciously, just kind of like in your DNA type of stuff that, that I've been thinking about. So anyways, one foot in front of the other, one day at a time. So much to live for, even when, you know, when there's dark days. I think about this too, is it's like, unless you intentionally end it, I think so often about this, like when there's like hard things to go through, to be like, it hasn't been fatal yet. Like the hardest thing you've ever been through in your life, you made it through alive. So like, what makes you think this time is going to be any different? You know, and the hardest shit you've ever done, you've made it through. And so like, you almost have proof already that you can do it, you know? But again, it's kind of my own lens. That's how it goes. Thanks for tuning in. Sorry for, the realness, but I just needed to, I think, get this out there, and wanted to share too, just that little bit about, how much you mean to the world, whether or not you realize that, I guess. Okay? Till meet again.